Hola, amiga, and welcome back to the Latina Leadership Podcast, the podcast for Latinas by Latinas, where every week we have real conversations about the issues and topics that matter most to our community. Topics like education, health and wellness, entrepreneurship, pay equity, and so much more. Get comfortable. We're bringing you another inspiring episode starting right now. Enjoy the show.
Hola, and welcome back to another episode of the Latina Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Angelica Casares. And on this episode, we have Marivette Navarrete. Marivette, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and, of course, giving us, well, let's start here because at every conversation, I give every opportunity to the interviewee to introduce themselves and let us know exactly what they do.
Oh, gracias, Angelica. Es un placer to be here with you on Latina Leadership Podcast. Hola, my name is Marivette, and I am the founder of The Mujerista. The Mujerista is a digital publication dedicated to empowering Latinas from all over the world who are creating incredible changes for our communities and abroad. And so we typically tend to highlight their stories and show the resilience that exists within our community, which is something that I think we need to have more of. Just show all the positive stuff that we're doing and show to so many future generations of Latinas that todo es posible, we can dream big, and that's, si se puede.
So Mujerista, it's an online, I guess, magazine or newspaper, or what are we looking at? Or a social platform?
I think it's more about social platform now. When it started, it definitely started off as a blog. It was something I had blogged before in fashion, just for fun. And so I wanted to sort of do something that was empowering for Latinas. And so the idea for the Mujerista came about. And since I had this background with blogging, I thought, let me do something similar, but ask others to submit their stories. So it started off as a more submission-based platform where young Latinas who felt like their stories weren't being shared online, they can come here and share it on our platform. So it started off as that, and then it started growing more in like a journalistic approach, I guess. So I started working with journalists who contributed so many stories to our site. I do some stories as well. And now I think it's evolved into more of a social community platform just because of how big social media is. And people are typically gravitating towards not so much reading, which is hard and difficult. But they're more into watching and listening to the stories. And so we've definitely have migrated more towards having our stories being told via like a video format or video format. And it's been quite the change, but as long as our stories are getting out there, being told, and the community is feeling represented and heard, we're doing what we got to do.
I'm assuming you're a writer yourself, right?
It's really funny when people try and tell me, oh, I think so. You're an editor, you're a writer, you're a producer. I don't really consider myself any of these things. It's really
okay.
Because I don't have formal training, I guess, in these areas. But because it's something that I threw myself into doing, I've sort of had to take on different hats, different roles. Yeah. And so I don't necessarily consider myself a writer or a journalist or an editor or producer, whatever it is. But I do definitely do work that involves like have those skills or do the work that involves those roles or positions.
So the Mujerista has been around for how long?
Oh my gosh, I think it's 6 years. We celebrated, I believe, sorry, my timeline is so off. I believe we celebrated 5 years last year. And so this is our 6th year. It launched in January of 2018. The idea came about the summer of 2017. It was during the presidential elections where I felt from the presidential elections of 2016. During that time, I was feeling as though our community was not being showcased in the best of light. There was all this negative rhetoric that was being said about our community. Some of the issues that are impacting us weren't necessarily being told or weren't at the forefront. And I also felt that even within our own community, the media that is out there wasn't sharing all of our stories. They would share specific groups of people's stories within our community. And so 2017, I really felt like I wanted to do something more that aligned with empowering Latinos. And one night, I think I woke up from a dream, and I don't know what it was. I don't know what I was dreaming about, but I woke up from a dream and I just said, aha, I got it. And the idea came about to just start, a digital blog where, we can tell these stories. I'm not seeing it online, so let me just do it myself. Let me build it myself is what I said. And so that's how the idea came about. And so the summer of 2017, I worked on basically getting the foundation done for this platform. Building up the website, speaking with other Latinas within the space that I admired and asked them what they felt was missing, what they would like to see, how they feel they can be better represented, and also just asking them how things within like the writing community works. Because again, I'm not necessarily a writer, and so I wanted to hear from them how they pitch stories, how they decide to write certain stories. And so I met with people online, in person, talked to them over the phone, and I spent like basically the rest of 2017 trying to build this out. And at the same time, I had a friend who was creating her own business for female Muay Thai fighters, Girl Gang Raps. We would meet up every few weeks and discuss like how everything was going, the building out of our businesses. And so there was one point where she told me, because I would share with her, oh, I don't know if what I'm doing is right, or I'm not sure about this, or I was having a lot of hesitations, or I guess like imposter syndrome about what I was doing. And so there was one day where she just said, that's it. I am giving you a launch date. Because you can't do it yourself, I'm going to give it to you. And I don't care what you have on this website. I don't care if it's finished or not. That's the day you're going to launch. And that's that. Mm-hmm. And so she gave me the launch date of January 1st, 2018. And I actually listened to her and I said, okay, she's right. I'm just going to launch it. So I worked on, uploading stories and reaching out and getting submissions. But I definitely didn't have everything that I wanted. Mm-hmm. But she set this date for me, and I felt like what she was telling me was true. If I don't launch now, I'm just never going to launch. Mm-hmm. I'll always find an excuse as to why I can't or shouldn't launch. Mm-hmm. So I decided to listen to her and launch on January 1st. And so from January 1st, 2018 is when the Mujerista launched, and it grew pretty quickly, I would say. And it was I can't thank the community enough for how much they have supported what we've built.
When it launched, it grew pretty rapidly, pretty fast. Mm-hmm. But usually what I notice is there's a turning point. And I think I want to say I've seen that shift mm-hmm. with among the Mujerista. What was that shift that happened? Like as you're growing and either you need to grow or you need to expand in one direction. What was it?
What do you mean by a shift that you've seen?
A shift. So what I say a shift in terms of like, I'm not so sure if it's like the engagement or the stories you're telling differently, mm-hmm. or the audience has shifted, because I thought Mujerista, I've heard about it right throughout the years, and then all of a sudden it just attracted me differently, and I was like, I don't know if the age changed or the story was being told differently.
Oh, this is so interesting.
Yeah, no, I think, but you know what? I think it's always done in such a really good way, right? Because it changes us mm-hmm. as the people who put it out. And we understand sometimes we have to let go, because when we launch these things, they're not meant necessarily for just us. So we can't tell those stories that just impact us, right?
Yes.
Although we want to tell every story that only impacts us, because we want to like dedicate it to ourselves at some point. But we understand that those stories don't belong to us. They belong to all of us. There was a point in the Mujerista where I don't know if you were speaking to older women at this point, and I was like, and so that's how it just like maintained on my radar.
Oh, right? Wow. So, I don't know that I appreciate you saying this, because I think when you're building something out and it's like a very small team working on this, you're so busy trying to get things done and trying to push content out there and mm-hmm. be there for the community, go to events, that sometimes you don't realize that perhaps there are changes within the brand. I mean, I know that there's definitely has been, because it's been 6 years, and the world in and of itself has changed, and the amount of, I would say, Latina communities that exist today compared to 6 years ago has grown exponentially. So I'm sure that there have been changes, and I just haven't fully sat to realize it. But I do think when we began, like I said, it was much more submission based. So we would receive content, and then we would decide if we felt that this was content that we felt like the community needed to hear and read about. Over the years, I had been granted grants. We fundraised, we had grants, and so we were able to work with journalists and have them pitch stories or pitch them stories and pay them for these contributions to the site. So our pieces became more journalistic, I would say, in approach. And now I would say we're definitely doing more interview Q&A kind of pieces. So I do think in that way, the blog has changed over the years. And if I can be 100% frank as to why the articles have changed, it's more than anything because of financial reasons. It's just, it's very difficult. I mean, if you're in media, you know, it's very difficult to pay, to make money off of being in media, let alone the Mujerista is a tiny publication. And so if we're not receiving grants, you know, we're not necessarily making money. I would love to be able to pay writers. And because I'm not necessarily in a position where I can, our stories aren't so much, you know, journalistic as they were before. And so it's become much more Q&A, where I'm doing the Q&As because it's just what I can afford at this time presently. Okay. So in that sense, it definitely has changed. And I think the other aspect of it is just that how our community is engaging with our platform has also changed. Because everyone is consuming media through videos, we've like we talked about earlier, we've had to shift how we're putting the content out there. And so we're doing very short, brief, you know, as much as we're trying to include as much information as we can in these videos, but keeping it at a short length because that's what we've seen people engage with, and it becomes more shareable. And if it's content that we want our community to know about, we're trying to meet them halfway, I guess, and make sure that they're receiving this content and sharing it. But it does obviously impact the world of media and journalism because, you know, it's diluting, I guess, the content or the stories, which is such a difficult place to be in.
Yeah, for everyone, it's a very difficult place to be in. But then, but you do want to be able to still be able to hit audiences, and so I think you still have to like switch and change and the way they're consuming. And you're right, it's completely across the board. And so the dedication of the podcast itself, I know we're long form, but we still piece to the short form. And so we have to make separate. I've had to hire somebody completely for social who like helps me with social aspect of things. And you're right. Let's talk a little bit entrepreneurship here, right? Do you feel like this has always been like your entrepreneurship spirit, like the Mujerista, or are you like into other like avenues and ventures outside the Mujerista to be able to sustain even yourself, to pay yourself?
Yeah, so I actually have like a 9-to-5 job, and so I do that as like that's how basically I get my bills paid. It helps support the Mujerista. Some of the things that I want to do with the Mujerista, it comes from that. In my mind, I'm a Pisces, so money, finances, it's not my thing. If you're a Pisces, I think you understand. The creative aspect of it all is what I love, and if I start seeing that Mujerista as a full-on business, it changes the way that I feel about the Mujerista. It becomes less passionate for me because I have been in so many startups in my career throughout my life, and I've seen just how much, you know, these businesses can take a toll on you mentally. And so I so I don't feel overwhelmed. I try and view the Mujerista as like a project, and that helps me kind of like keep myself sane. But yes, I have a 9-to-5 job that is in media. It's in social media as well. So I do that for a living, and then I do the Mujerista as a project. And if money comes my way through grants or paid partnerships, and it's amazing. But I keep myself afloat with my job.
I completely respect that. I completely respect that, because once once it does become work, I always try to separate myself from the podcast and be like, it's not mine. It's
Yeah.
not mine. It's ours.
Yes.
So whatever, like, of course, it still has to have oversight. And I try to keep the oversight at a very minimal as much as possible. I do most of the interviews like here, but it's still like I want to pay women to like be co-host of the podcast because that's what they deserve.
Yes.
So, but we're still trying to like manage all of that and still, I respect that so much to the point where I cannot express it in words at all. All I can do is explain why.
I mean, it's important that we do discuss it because many people do think that I do the Mujerista full time. And I think there was a time for a few months where I tried it, but then the pandemic hit and the marketing budgets for just about everybody was completely different. I was afraid. And so I went back into the work field and was able to find a job pretty quickly, luckily, during that time. And I said, you know what, just to feel safe, I'm going to continue working, 9 to 5, and then do the Mujerista on my own time when I have time. And I will say that it's difficult to do, obviously, because you're now kind of juggling two jobs in a sense. But again, I try to view the Mujerista as a project precisely because if I see it as a job, that my relationship with it will be different. Mm-hmm. And I just also have had so many mental breakdowns throughout, or like, let me take a step back. Not mental breakdowns. I would say I've had many burnouts. Yeah. And so I've had periods where I do disappear for a few months on social because being or on social or on like creating content, because having these two, having a job and then having this project can be overwhelming, especially because they're both in media. They both are heavily involved in social media. And so you're constantly reading about or learning about or seeing, hearing stories that are very challenging or difficult to read about. And so it starts taking a toll on you. And so I definitely have had many burnouts moments or just moments of insecurity with like, okay, am I doing the right thing when it comes to the Mujerista? Am I telling the right stories? Are people in the community still interested? And so because I've had those burnouts, I now, it is because of precisely that why I view the Mujerista differently. Like my relationship with it is like, it's a project. It's something that I love. I'm passionate about. And it's something that I do for myself and for the community at large. Because it's what keeps me going, basically. Yeah. Because seeing it differently, I promise you, I would have a different relationship with it.
I love your transparency. I love the transparency that you're giving in terms of the conversation like this. I think hearing you speak in terms of like it being much more, because we want these projects to last. We want them to sustain in a way that they're years beyond us, that they move past who we are and what we do. And as the times shift and change, our stories aren't going to shift and change. And we want our little cousins and our little, all of them to like see what it is that we're providing, that we are a huge, like, I don't know if I want to call it support, the backbone. I don't know what to call it, but I know that we make a difference in the community. And not necessarily we, as in like me and you, Mary.
It's okay.
I'm calling you Mary. Marivette. Like it's not so much.
You can say Mari. You can say Mari.
It's not so much that me and you are making that difference. It's that their stories that they're being told are making the difference.
Yes. We're just sort of like the avenue to how these stories
yeah.
I'm glad you just said that because the messages I receive where people are saying like, we love what you do, we love the content that you're sharing. I know that we're playing a role in getting that content out there. So I appreciate and love those messages. And honestly, it really helps keep me going. I don't know about you, but the moments where it always happens, the moments where I'm feeling like, I don't know how long I can keep doing this, I start receiving those messages. Like those messages end up in my DMs and my emails. And it's like, that's why I'm doing it, because I'm providing something for our community where they are feeling empowered, where they are feeling like, okay, let me go start a business. Let me go run for office. I don't know, let me go write a book. And so that's what keeps me going. But at the end of the day, what's making all of this possible, it's as what you said, it's their stories, it's how they show up for us, it's how they are sharing our content, it's how they are going out there and doing what it is that they've dreamed of doing. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I don't think our listeners, our readers, I don't think they give themselves enough credit.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I would really like them to know, that this is completely theirs. I'm just the person that like sits at the corner giving you directions, right? It's like I'm like the person who's like, you're like, I'm lost, and I'm like, okay, you're gonna take a left, right? That's what I heard. It's amazing place out there. Keep going, like keep going. You got it. Like you just keep going, keep going. There's lights, and people are like, te van a festejar when you get there. I promise. Keep going.
Yes.
Yeah, and so it is, and I hope that more women, more young ladies, and even older continue to put out projects just like yours, because there's opportunity to be able to tell the stories in a different way, in a different manner, and it excites you when you're watching it, because you're like, oh my god, yeah, like, okay, so what can we do, like how can we sit here, right? We want to impact nationally, but also just locally.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I could keep going about this. I agree with you, because, the way that we tell our stories is the way that the Mujerista tells their stories. Yeah. And there are so many other platforms that are around now that I love, like Latinas Poderosas. It's one of my favorite Latina communities out there. And they're like, Kayla has her own way of how she tells the stories of the Latinas that she highlights. Same with We All Grow Latina. Yeah. They have a different way of how they share stories. And so I love that we're all existing at the same time, and behind the scenes that we all support each other, and that we're there with one another and share events or opportunities with one another. And I think I want people to know that we're doing it. Like, I know that all of us are doing this because we do want these next generations of Latinas that are coming forward to take the reins at some point, or to go off and create their own platforms, as you said, and tell other stories. Because I think our experiences, my experience alone, is going to be different from the future generations of Latinas. I am the daughter of first generation immigrants. My parents immigrated from Nicaragua. I was born here, and I was born and raised in Miami. So I have a different way of how I view the Latino community, or my experiences with the Latino community, from someone whose family might have been here for like 3 generations or so, who grew up in Texas or in New York. And so I think the more platforms we can have, the better. I mean, there's so many other medias that are that are very specific to communities. And so why can't the Latino community have as many as well? I'm all for it. I'm all for the next generations to continue creating their own platforms and moving everything forward and improving our community.
I think you briefly mentioned this, because I can go on this topic forever, because even now that I'm like listening to you, hearing like even Mexican Americans, first generation Mexican Americans, if you land in California or if you land in Texas, you're not going to have the same experience. There's just no way. And so as you're hearing it, and you mentioned it quickly, but let me talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
So your first gen, your parents were immigrants from Nicaragua. How did they end up here, and why Miami?
So I think the 70s, 80s were a very turbulent time for a lot of Latin America. They were growing up at some point during a communist dictatorship. And so they basically fled, war-torn Nicaragua. My mother's family immigrated. I think they went to Mexico for a couple of months. Some of them. It was because they all kind of came in at different points, but they all settled in Miami. So I know a few of them immigrated to Mexico for a couple of months before they crossed to go into the United States. But for, just to keep everything short, I'll just briefly talk about my family. Actually, let me start this part over.
No, as long as you want. I have time.
Okay. But let me just start the story over, because I feel like I went off on a rant. But okay, so my family, my mom and dad, they were escaping like war-torn Nicaragua. It was under a communist dictatorship. And so they did not feel safe anymore, and they decided to flee to the United States and seek asylum. My mother, she, with my uncle, they they went to Mexico and they paid coyotes to basically bring them across the border. My mother was actually pregnant with me when she did it. And so it was my mother, my uncle, my cousin, who was like, a toddler maybe, that crossed the border in the middle of the night with coyotes. And so she doesn't like to tell the story so much. I don't know if there's, I'm sure there is a lot of pain and trauma that comes with it. My uncle is the one that is more open and honest about what happened. But this is my understanding from what I've heard over the years. So they crossed, the desert, middle of the night. They were very quiet. They were hungry. They were thirsty. I mean, it's crazy because she was so young. I think she was 21. And so it's always insane to hear what they were going through at 21. And, my experience as a 21-year-old growing up in the US was, the complete opposite. And so knowing that she was pregnant and crossing with my cousin and my uncle in the middle of the night with coyotes, and it's so courageous. And that's why I always get so hurt and offended when I hear these stories that come out about immigrants in the media or from different media or from different, talking heads, because I don't think they realize that if they're putting themselves in this kind of danger, it's because they truly feel like this is the only way out for themselves. I applaud my family, for my mother for doing what she did. I think she was so courageous. After they crossed the border, I think they had some money to go to a motel. And so they stayed at a motel until they had a taxi arranged to take them to the airport. And at that time, you didn't really need ID to travel at the airport to get on planes. And so they just kind of got on a plane and flew to Miami because my mother's sisters were already in Miami at that time and established like a home in Little Havana in Miami. And at that time specifically, this was like the late 80s, early 90s. There was a wave of Nicaraguan immigrants that were coming into the United States, specifically going to Miami.
Okay.
So that's I don't know how Miami was the chosen place. I believe because there was already a big Latino community because of the Cuban population that had immigrated in like the 70s, 80s, and before. So I believe that might have been, and Nicaragua and Cuba have always had similar trajectories when it comes to politics and governments. So yeah, that's how my mother came. My father stayed behind. He had actually been forced to enlist to fight for the Sandinistas, and it's a party that he did not believe in. But they came into his home and they took him out and they made him fight. My understanding is that at some point he said, "I'm not doing this. I don't believe in this," and his baby mother, his baby mama, his girlfriend was out in Miami pregnant. And so I think he decided, I'm going to follow in her footsteps. And so he actually also left afoot and like started traveling to Mexico and do the same thing, get a coyote, come into the US, fly to Miami. The story goes something like that, is from what I understand. And then I was born like a few months later in Miami.
No, that the immigrant story always, and I understand because it's hard. Like the immigrant story within like my history, like personal history, is, from my understanding, I'm the only one born here in the United States, but the story's told differently, right? And it's the strangest thing ever. Nobody ever really wants to say like what or why it's being told like that, but I think, and then also it's fled a lot of people back into shame, wanting to like do better for their family. They're being pushed back into the shame of leaving their country and being told that that just, that's where you were born, and oh well, stick it out, and too bad for you, and oh no, and so I feel like, yeah, I appreciate you telling the story as much as you possibly could based on your complete understanding, because it is, some people are completely comfortable, and then some people are like, ugh, you know what?
I'm very open. I don't know I don't know how happy my parents are when I tell the stories.
Mhm.
But I honestly I'm very open and transparent about it, just because I feel like their stories do need to be shared. Again, I don't think those that speak so negatively about immigrants, or those who are illegal aliens, or that are illegally crossing the border, or that they're terrorists, whatever it is that's the rhetoric that's being said, I don't think they realize just that they're talking about human beings,
Yeah.
talking about people who have, are leaving behind a full life. And for the most part, it's not by choice. I know for a fact my father would have loved to have stayed in Nicaragua. He dreams about it to this day. But because of the circumstances of the livelihood there, they just felt unsafe. They felt that they couldn't reach a full potential, or provide their family a safe and secure, or better outcome in their life. And so I wish that these people who speak so negatively about immigrants would just take a step back and listen to more of these stories, because I don't again they just I don't know if that they don't realize it, or they're purposely. I mean, some of them are purposely doing it, but it's just you're playing with people's lives. You're playing with people's stories, and it's a true shame that that happens, because honestly, if my mother and my father hadn't decided to do what they did, I don't know what my life would look like. And I'm very fortunate with how my life has turned out. And because of it, I've been able to create a platform like the Mujerista here. And it's something that I don't think I would have been possible if I was in Nicaragua, or born in Nicaragua and stayed in Nicaragua. And so, when you're trying to prevent others from coming into the land of possibilities, as they like to say, and reach the American dream, you're possibly preventing someone like me, who I think I've contributed to this country, from being able to do what I've been able to do, and to show others within my community and people in Miami alone, because I think we still don't fully understand just how much we can do. And so when they're able to see some of the stuff that I've been able to do over the years with the Mujerista, I know that it's inspired others to go out and do, to reach their dreams. And so like I'm always transparent about telling their story, and I love to tell their story as much as I can, because I think it's just so important. And I find what they did so courageous, and they were so young when they did it too. And to come to a new country, leave everything behind. My mother was studying chemistry in the university, and she couldn't continue education like that here. She picked up a job at McDonald's and has worked there her whole entire life. And she's now a proud manager at a local McDonald's here. And she's so happy with what she's been able to build for herself. And she speaks the language she speaks English. She goes to work. She's a homeowner. This is my mom and dad. They're both homeowners. They own their cars. Like they're very happy and proud with what they've been able to build here. And I think it just goes to show you the resiliency of Latinos and immigrants, period. So yeah, if I can tell their story, I will, probably.
You're right. It's sometimes it was right, the land of opportunity. And sometimes we think of it like that, but then I know that for some immigrants, it's survive or not survive. And so some of them are going to choose to survive, which is why they make that trek across the desert, across the Rio Grande. This was such an insightful conversation. I really, really enjoyed this one. But before I let you go, is there something that I did not ask you, or something that you'd like to share?
I'm ready to keep going for like an hour. I'm sorry, what was the question?
No worries. I would, but I'm looking at it. I'm like, Julian, my editor is gonna be like, Angelica, what the hell?
I know, and I tend to
No, I do. I am the one. Trust me, you're not talking a lot. I'm asking all the questions, and I do that for a reason, because I am so nosy. I have to stop.
Chismosa.
Yeah, I so. Is there something I did not ask you that you'd like to share?
Oh my gosh, that pertains to the movie. I don't know.
That pertains to the Mujerista or future projects?
Not yet.
Okay.
I can't divulge anything yet. But I think more than anything, it's just I'm forever thankful for the opportunities that the Mujerista has been able to bring me, and it's all because of the community that supports the Mujerista. We've crowdfunded in the past, and people showed up for us in a way that I never imagined. The way that our stories are still being read, and the content still being shared. The way that people are like, hey, I need to connect you to this person because their story needs to be told on your platform. The way that people are just constantly thinking of us and how to support us, or how there's another great story that we can tell, like that just brightens my day so much. And like I said before, it's what keeps me definitely going in terms of continuing to do the Mujerista in the last few years. And I hope that I'm always trying to figure out how can I pay this forward to them. And I still don't feel like I've come up with the best way to do it, but I'm still going to be here telling their stories as long as they want to allow me to do it. But I appreciate all the support that I've received over the years from our community. And there are so many other platforms like the Mujerista that are around. And I hope that people are, following them, reading their content, listening to their content as well, and supporting them, because we all deserve it, because we're doing such amazing work for our community, and we're doing it without expecting anything in return. I guarantee you that we're doing it because it's something that we are very passionate about and we believe in, and because we want to be providing the representation that we've needed for so long. And even now, I know that there was a big push for representation a few years back, and that kind of, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like that died down a bit. And and that's why it's important to have platforms like ours around, because people are gonna come and go. These brands and these businesses are gonna come and go because their budgets get cut. But we are still here, and we're doing it with the right intention. So if you guys can all just continue to support us and be there for us, and shout us out when you can, share our profiles when you can, or our podcast, please do so, because you're helping us, whether you think so or not. Like it helps. It really does.
It really does. It really does help. So before I leave you, I always ask this one last question to every guest on this platform.
Okay.
Do you consider yourself a leader? Why or why not?
Oh my gosh. If you had asked me this maybe a year or 2 years ago, I would have said, no, I don't think so. Kind of like what I said earlier about being a writer. Today, I would say yes. One, because of my year of therapy, I've learned to, I've learned that I need to be more, what's the word? I've learned in this last year with therapy that I've been able to write down all the accomplishments that I've had and what those accomplishments have resulted in. And to be able to write that all down and see it for myself, it made me have an aha moment of like, no, I am a leader. I am doing incredible work. I have been able to do XYZ, and in this way it has resulted in this for our community. So one, because I would say therapy definitely helped me get there. And two, I consider myself a leader. I'm trying to figure out a way to say it where it just doesn't come off like, I don't know, selfishly. Because like, okay, it is what it is.
When it's deserved.
That's the word. That was the word that I was looking for. I think if, like I was saying, if I had been asked a year ago, I would have not felt deserving of it. And it's because I have so many insecurities, to be quite frank. And so putting myself, because to me, calling yourself a leader is like you're putting yourself on a pedestal. And I don't know why I have a hard time accepting that I deserve to be on a pedestal, and that I have every reason to believe in that. But like I was saying, with this last year, I've been doing really great therapy sessions, and it's allowed me to realize, the value that I have for this world. Being able to see everything that I have done kind of on my own without very little money, and to have reached and be in the spaces that I have been in over the years. I've had to kind of just come to that conclusion of like, no, man, you are a leader, you are incredible. But yeah, I would consider myself a leader specifically because I would say that I have had opportunities where very important people from different brands or in government have reached out to get my insight on things that pertain to the Latino community. And so in those discussions, I've been able to share my thoughts, and I'm being heard, and I'm seeing like the things that I am saying kind of be put into fruition, or I don't think I'm saying this right. I'm sorry.
No, I think you're saying
I'm having a hard time with this question.
No, I think you're completely right. So one of the reasons that I call this the Latina Leadership Series, or it started off with the Latina Leadership Series, but I think as Latinas, we don't take the word leadership lightly. And so we give a lot of extension to people that we know that, yeah, you're doing good. Yeah, you're, whatever. But when we say leadership, when we say because we're putting our foot forward, we're putting our name out there, and we're putting our name, like, when we put our name out there, it's not to be taken lightly, because as in the world of, if you know that movie, because it's my name is on there. My name. Yeah.
Can you just say whatever it is that you just said? No, I mean, no. Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. Let's do this. What you were saying is completely right. I think we do hold the word leadership in a very high esteem. And for a lot of us, we don't typically see a lot of leaders that look like us or speak like us or have had experiences like us out there. And so, to then be considered as one, there's a lot of gravitas that comes with that. And for someone like me, who I do have a lot of insecurities and do have a hard time visualizing myself as somebody that is making an impact, being called a leader, it is sort of like a whoa kind of moment for me. I do consider myself one. I think saying it out loud and to others feels differently. Like it feels more like, oh my gosh, I am calling myself a leader. I'm calling myself a strong force in the world. So I think that's where I'm having like the trouble sort of getting it out there.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. When you call yourself a leader, you are putting your name out there, and putting your name out there in that way, there's a lot that goes into that. And I think it's also kind of scary to do that
because you're afraid to mess it up.
Yeah, you have, especially because we're doing something where there's not a lot of us doing it, and you want to do it right. You want to do it where people are proud of you, and people are saying, she's amazing and she represents me. That's who I aspire to be. I take that with, like, I don't play around with that. Like, to me, it's a big deal if somebody is inspired by me, or wants to be me, or something like that, or idolizes. I think that's huge. And so I'm doing this for my community. I'm doing this for my family, and I do it with a lot of heart and intent. And so in that way, I feel that I am a leader because I'm doing it for, I believe, are the right reasons. And I'm doing it because I want there to be future leaders that go on and do more than I could have ever dreamed of doing. And I've been lucky with the platform that has been built over the years with the Mujerista, and with the support that we've had over the years, to be in incredible spaces. I've been able to go to the White House like 5 times at this point. And each invitation, I held it with, I cried each time. And when I would step foot into that White House or step a foot outside of the White House, I cried and sobbed every moment, because it's always insane to feel like there are so few Latinos that walk through these doors. And the ones that do are typically in service, like they're doing service work. And so I'm coming here as somebody that's representing a community that's so often misrepresented, And so I am here to sort of be loud and proud of who I am, where I come from, and how much power exists within our community. And so because of that, I feel that I don't take this lightly, and I consider myself a leader. And I hope that answered the question.
No, you did. You completely did. I couldn't help but to think of my son when he calls me, because he calls me and he's like, Mom, I got like an 80, an 85, and 90. Mind you, the kid is already old. I'm the same way with my mom, because all I want to do is make her proud. And I noticed that with my son, he's just trying to make me proud, and we're just trying to make our community proud. I'm just trying to make my mom proud. And so I don't take it lightly. And I want to do everything in the world to sit there and say, she tried her hardest. She was a leader.
Yeah.
And that's all I want to do. So I think you said it in such an amazing way where people completely relate to that.
I hope so.
No, you did. You definitely.
I get lost into in what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to say I am 35, right? I'm 35, and to this day, like you said, all I want to do is make my mom proud. I'm gonna cry in like a few seconds. It is the Pisces in me. Please forgive me. But yes, I to this day, and I think till the day, I don't know, I will forever do everything with my parents in mind. I think they sacrificed so much to get to where they are, and more importantly for them to have me be where I am at. And so I don't know how I could ever repay them for that. And so all I ever do is try and make them proud. And I hope I'm doing that. And it's so great to hear that you are also that's what you keep envisioning as well. And I think it's just something that's ingrained in our culture that, because we're typically Latino families are close. And the idea of family is so much instilled within us that we can't help to do things and always carry our family on our backs when we're doing it. So every space, every time I walk into a space that I probably shouldn't be at, where I probably don't belong, where not many of us have walked through those doors, I carry my community, and I carry my mom and dad and my sister and my cousins and my tios and my tias, the second, third, fourth, fifth cousins in Nicaragua. I carry them all on my back too, on my shoulders. And they give me so much strength to get through those days, because there are times when you walk through those spaces where you do feel it. You do feel like, oh man, I don't belong here. There are so many white faces here. And, and there's different educations that you or just different ways of speaking that you hear there. And so I carry them on my shoulder, and I remember this is why I'm here, and I am deserving, and that we have done the work as well, and we belong here, and that we are providing something that others probably wouldn't have been able to provide if we weren't there. And so, yeah, I'm glad you also said that you just want to make your mom proud, because I think that's what my goal is too.
Thank you for the sincerity, the transparency, and the pride that you speak as we recorded this one, because it was felt. I greatly, immensely, very much appreciate it. I know it's going to be appreciated through the audience also. So for those who don't know, you can find Mujerista on every platform: Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. They're out there.
I don't think we're on Snapchat. I don't know if people are still using Snapchat, but I'm not on Snapchat. But yes, it's at The Mujerista, and you can visit the blog at themujerista.com.
Awesome. Gracias, Marivette, for joining me today. And as usual, please follow and let her know how proud we are of her also. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Latina Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your amigas, comadres, hermanas, your mom, your tias, or anyone who you think would enjoy the conversation. The Latina Leadership Podcast is a weekly video and audio podcast since 2020. Visit our online Latina Leaders Directory, join our growing community of Latina changemakers, keep up with our calendar of events, or reach out to us if you're interested in supporting the Latina Leadership Podcast by visiting our website at latinaleadershippodcast.com. And with that, we'll see you next time.